And good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm very well. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Not too bad for a working Friday.
Yes. Holiday working Friday.
Yes, indeed. Doesn't bother me in the least, however. I've always enjoyed working holidays, especially the ones in the winter. Here comes Elizabeth now.
Great.
Okay. Hey,
Hi,
hey.
Mark. Hello, hello,
Hi.
hello. Hi, Richard.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, coming through. Well, very good. Very good.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so we're all set.
So, Richard, I had an interesting experience. The lake house I have at Lake Arrowhead.
Mm-hmm.
So, whoops. So I was up there a couple of weeks ago, and I saw the people next door hired a realtor, and they were hammering in a for sale sign.
Uh-huh.
I don't have the money and I don't have the time. And you know what I'm going to say? I bought the house. And
Congratulations.
so I have the two properties now, which are both on the lake. And one of them I named, now see, Marco, I'm a grandmom. One of them I named Calandia after my grandson, Callan. And the other one, that's the new one that is closing on Monday. And I named that Orlandia. That's Orla is my granddaughter. And so in my trust and will and all that I'm working on, that, earmarked for those kids because just a little background. I know Richard comes from a close family, but I come from this very close ethnic family, and my brothers and sisters and I always have stuck together. And I was wanting some kind of vehicle where I could say, being close siblings is pretty important. You can also fight a lot, but
True.
Yeah.
yeah. So that was my move. It's like, and I don't know, it was so immediate. I said, I'll buy it. I started to look around for, money, and then she's like, well, what's your offer and can you buy it? I mean, there's another person interested. So I said, well, I'll buy it in 10 days. So, uh,
Very cool. Very
yeah,
cool.
but now I did an offer as is, because I didn't want to go through the like inspections and the contractors and this and that, because I figured, I could do it myself. And then I had the same guy that did my house, the house next door, check it out. He's like, okay, well, the painting and the roofing's going to be 68,000. It's like, oh,
Holy moly. Wow.
that's okay. It's stuff that you could do. For example, unless the roof is going to fall in on you, you're going to be okay. You
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
kind of, you know. And
So
then,
it's
Richard,
it
I was
yeah.
thinking of you because now I've got two houses up there.
Uh-huh.
And yes, I'm fixing up one to rent, this one, Orlandia, the one I'm just buying. But it has an entire basement area, which is weird for California. But it's like a granny flat down there. And I was thinking, if you and Rita are like, what do we do? Because we're looking for a place. You know, um, During construction, I don't know if you can work the radio station and still be up in Arrowhead. The internet is okay. It's not great. I've done a lot of
Uh-huh.
shows from up there,
Right.
but I don't know. It could be like, oh,
Well,
Richard, you and Rita
I'll,
would be there.
I'll tell
Maybe
you what. I'll tell you what, we're about to start here. I would love, let's talk about it, later today or over the weekend or something like that, because
Yeah,
that
today
would be
I'm
wonderful.
booked entirely, but I was thinking, I wonder if, I kind of would like a manager on site, and
Sure.
I interviewed a few
Yeah.
like designers and decorators and
Uh,
people like that that could be
all
on
right.
site.
Okay.
Okay.
Here we go. Thank you. Thank you for thinking of us. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. You're live.
Hello, 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 Santa Barbara. It's your Chantress of everything valuable and beautiful, Elizabeth Stewart, and this is July 4th weekend. I am so thrilled because the folks at Art Forum have been talking to me about this gentleman, Marco Pinter, and I've known of his work for a number of years. And I was like, we know the same people. You know, but our paths never crossed. And then one of the gals from the Art Fund said, I want him to be on your show because I think, there's really some valuable things that he's doing. And what was so much fun, Richard, you're going to love this because this is up your alley too, and you're going to grab Marco for your show. I know you are. But I want to talk about Marco and what he does a little bit. And I don't completely understand it. And what I did last night, Marco, was I looked at, all I could find about what you do, but I also called my son's father. So my son's father has been in so he's not a doctor, but he's an engineer, and he has his PhD in higher mathematics. That's how we met at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And he has pioneered for City of Hope, which is a cancer institute in uh, around the LA area. He's pioneered a network of people going through a certain type of cancer, and he's done a website, not a website, but an app that's sort of similar to what MindClay is all about. We'll talk about MindClay in a minute. And I called him last night and I said, you've had this app running for and it's out of the therapeutic department at City of Hope. They've adopted it and they paid him for, the development of it. You've had him, you've done this it's an interlocking system where, people that are suffering from certain types of cancer are allowed to kind of interact in many, many ways, whether it be a healing modality or just a chat or talk. And he said, well, it's super, super important because it's connected and connecting. In this case, it's a cancer that affects male people. So it's connecting a brotherhood, and it's connecting lots of different generations. And yet, so I wanted him to be on the program. He was busy this morning, but I wanted him to talk with you. And I've also sent all of the details that I researched about you to him. And so he wants to talk to you about what he's doing at City of Hope. And he's also done a platform for a major hospital in India now.
Mhm.
The same type of thing. But so let's talk about MindClay. And this is Marco Pinter, Richard. And I want you to know how interesting this gentleman is. How can I describe this in a nutshell? I will tell you that he's bringing he's bringing both sides of the mind and the creative soul and spirit together in a certain type of platform. And this platform is called MindClay. Um, the Museum of Sensory and Movement Experience is where I first heard of Marco's work at the Arts Fund. But there's so many segments right now, Marco, in our world. We've got the people who are the creative types. We've got the people who despair of the creative types. We've got this polar side and that polar side. And I always thought, going through my education, my master's, my PhD, all that, separate departments were separate things. And I remember when my son was taking his doctorate, he was at the Max Planck Institute and he was studying evolutionary biology. And the two professors right next to each other were fighting about the way an ape's thumbs were created. And
Mhm.
it's like what I was reading about what you were doing was just the opposite, was pulling things together. And so there's creative people. There's people that are technologically gifted people. There's the application that he's developed has to do with well-being, has to do with calming effects, has to do with creative outlets, has to do with, it's interesting to me that you've got art, music, movement, writing, etc. Um, meditation applications, mental health applications, and it's through, I would say, a convergence of many different disciplines. It's not just the creative arts. It's not just, the spiritual arts. It's not just the healing arts. And then, I realized that not only is Marco doing this really interesting work, but he's also, kind of pushing the envelope with the kind of creatives that he's bringing. Okay, so let's talk about, I also want to talk about John Boogs, who's actually just signed on with you and who's an artist, choreographer, and director. He just did a talk, or is going to do a talk at UCSB, and I want to go. He's a remarkable dancer, and I was fascinated to know more about this connection with MindClay. And before I let Marco speak, one of the things that, Marco, I've looked at art for 30 years as an appraiser. And if people ask me, what's the essence of the creative endeavor? My answer would be, it's an endeavor to problem solve. That's it. And it's an endeavor to problem solve in a way that uses both analytical and intuitive gifts, I think. And that's why I was so intrigued. And then I pulled up the abstract that Northwestern did. Let's see, I have it here. MindClay, from interactive installations to a digital platform for therapeutic creative arts. And this was a collaboration with you and the Feinberg School of Medicine. And this was a recent manuscript just from September of 2024. I read the abstract on it, and I just want to read. So, Richard, I'm going to read this abstract. It's just a couple of sentences because I want you to I should have done this before. I want you to have the background so that you can ask Marco some questions too. The abstract says, building on a foundation of interactive media arts, this paper, of course, is talking about MindClay. MindClay explores the evolution from large-scale kinetic installations to a digital mental wellness platform called MindClay. The work was inspired by observing public interactions with Marco's installations, which showed calming and motivational effects. A media arts museum was founded here in Santa Barbara to compare the impacts of different installations on well-being. In collaboration with therapists, MindClay integrates an evidence-based practice into a range of creative activities. This platform offers therapeutic, diverse experience in visual art, music, movement, and writing. The approach provides an engaging alternative to meditation apps, addressing the mental health needs of a broader audience, and boy, do we need that now. Through a convergence of art, science, and technology, MindClay aspires to make therapeutic creativity widely accessible. So fascinating. So I have to tell you, okay, Marco, before I let you talk about this. So I had some recent experiences. I just finished last 10 days ago. I had my last surgery for skin cancer, a strange type of skin cancer. And so I was looking at the app that the YouTube that you sent me about MindClay, and I looked into it a little bit more, and I thought it's very interesting because the surgeon and so there were two surgeons that were helping me. Neither of them talked about the mind, food, uh, meditation in any regards, any kind of oxygen therapy, any kind of creative outlet, any kind. So it was, if you can't sleep, here's this. And they prescribed Valium and oxycodone, and I wasn't thrilled with either. And so when I was looking into your work, it was at a really interesting time because I was just approaching the last set of surgeries. And I was thinking, why isn't this more prevalent? I mean, because we've got, wonderful doctors. They, were reconstructing parts of my face and neck. That's great. But nothing about what the mind can do, the spirit can do, and a cousin of mine has the same malady. And I said to her, you have studied yoga for a long, long time. Instead of the drugs they're telling you about, ask your yogi what he would suggest for you as you go through some of this surgical stuff.
Mhm.
So it's touching me in a really interesting time in my life in a deep level. And I want you to talk about, obviously, Richard, we have a global mental health care crisis right now. I mean, we just do. And I want to know what Marco's platform is, how he's thinking about this. He is a scholar. He has his doctorate from UCSB. He's worked with some incredible minds in this field. It is a growing field. It's not woo-woo stuff. It's not. There's real science here and there's real creativity here. And people are like, well, how can that be? The two are not usually linked.
Hmm.
As I found out in my recent, it's been like a year of surgeries, of my recent surgeries, they're not linked. Nobody's linking them.
Mhm.
Okay, so here's Marco. Yeah, that was an 18-minute introduction. So here's Marco, and I'd love to have Marco talk a little bit about, he's an artist, he's a technologist, he's a creative spirit. He is also super connected with the arts. And it's not just the arts on a 2 or 3-dimensional plane, it's the arts on a 4 and 6-dimensional plane.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
talk, Marco. Yeah, about your work and what I'd be interested to know about, knowing what I've been through is the interaction with the School of Medicine.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth, for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about this. I would say we can dive into any of these aspects, but just to kind of pull it all together for a minute, I've had these parallel careers, or I did have parallel careers for many years. I came from a technology background originally, and I was with a company in Santa Barbara called In Touch Health, doing um, telehealth over robots, actually. And I was with them for a long time. And then in 2020, In Touch was acquired by Teladoc, which owns BetterHelp. And that was actually, that this is a whole other discussion for other people, but that was the largest acquisition in Santa Barbara history. So that happened in 2020, and then I worked for Teladoc for a while. But in parallel to all this, I'm an artist, and I went back to school, kind of a later in life PhD at UCSB in the Media Arts and Technology program. I know you've had people from that program talk on the
Yes,
show, like Joanne.
Joanne, for example.
Yes, so she was
Yeah.
faculty at that time, and I was a PhD student there. And I created interactive works that were meant initially to be art pieces that people would enjoy. And in watching people interact with them, I noticed some deeper things happening, which I could go into. So anyway, these two things were happening in parallel in my life. And then a couple years ago, well, a few years ago, while I was still at Teladoc, I started evangelizing. There needs to be a better way for people to have access to self-guided mental wellness. So we know Calm and Headspace are out there. Teladoc has a great platform called My Strength, which is self-guided and is largely videos by smart psychologists telling you things you can do. And the problem with all of these kind of platforms, and really a lot of digital health, is that people drop out of them. Meditation is hard. Also, it's even contraindicated for some people. It can be a chore for a lot of people. Also, um, getting the impetus after you've signed up to actually watch the next video on what you can do to decrease your anxiety. People are just not getting drawn back enough. And I had a theory that seemed very logical that if we integrate therapeutic creative arts grounded in real art therapy, music therapy, dance movement therapy, writing, that we could bring people back a lot more. And also, just having creativity and the arts in your life is intrinsically valuable. So I was evangelizing that, and then I had the opportunity to branch out and do that on my own. And this was somehow a convergence of, the last 20 years of my careers, which was two different parallel. I had digital health and I had the arts, and somehow like they finally came together. It was like my whole career finally led to what I'm doing now. And in a nutshell, the way I describe MindClay in one line, so people understand, is I say, imagine calmer headspace, which most people know about, but instead of meditation, you are offered therapeutic art, music, movement, and writing. And so it's been a couple of years. We were in beta last year. We released our official 1.0 release the beginning of this year and put some money into advertising, and we have a chunk of users. And now, like the theory is proven, people do come back. They are motivated to, create a mandala or a kaleidoscope
I
or
love that. I
uh,
love that. Yeah.
or this like fading Zen drawing activity, or to work with a video recording of our music therapist who will, say, oh, for instance, for percussion, like grab something from the table uh, and, do a call and response with her. Or there's interesting therapeutic writing activities, like write this haiku on a parchment, or something called blackout poetry, or there's AI facilitated writing as well, and movement. And you touched on this a bit. And therapeutic movement is really valuable. A lot of people aren't comfortable with moving, but it's so important. A lot of my artworks were about bringing out movement. In fact, just to introduce this and for some of this to make sense, one of my pieces that was at the Museum of Sensory and Movement Experiences was called Fluid Connections. And you stand in front of it and you see your silhouette, and then your arms start growing extensions that kind of flow into the air and wave around. And I learned that um, about half of people haven't raised their arms over their shoulders in months. But what happens when people get in front of that is without thinking, they start putting their hands over their heads and waving them around. And so, in spite of themselves, they're experiencing embodiment and really healing movement.
Oh,
And
that is
so
fantastic.
I saw some
That's
beautiful things happen there, and I've got other stories I could tell, but something was there. So we're integrating that kind of therapeutic movement into MindClay. And as you mentioned, so this is kind of the latest. We already had like 6 movement activities, and then John Boogs was in town. He's an amazing dancer. He's an Emmy award-winning choreographer. He's a big believer in therapeutic movement. Um, and he actually, a film that he's won some acclaim for is about addressing stigma in BIPOC populations, African American populations, especially men. And in this film, which is so beautiful, a series of men come in to a therapist's room for therapy, but there's no words. They're expressing everything in their body, in movement. So I'm flying out to Vegas, this coming week. John lives there, and we've been designing these activities. So we're filming 3 movement activities, and it's therapeutic movement, but he's doing it through street movement, like pop from Pop and Lock, or something called animation, or waving. And so I'm hoping also to draw in more men, that men tend to be the most resistant to, free form dance and movement. So John kind of helps bring us, yeah, an even more diverse platform.
Okay, so now I've got a little bit of tiny background, and I've got a couple of questions for you. So, um, this is going to sound kind of like a analogy, metaphor, but it's a way I can put it to you, Marco. So, I'm in front of like two major monitors. I've got 2 computers here. Um, I work from home now since the pandemic. So this is my old dining table, and my old dining room is just filled with, my technology. When I write a review of um of 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 a collection of art, I write it longhand. I
Hmm.
I write it longhand. Anything that's important to me, I write it longhand, and I write with a pen, and paper that I've used on one side, and now I can save it by writing on the other, and I write it and I don't transcribe it until I redo the longhand version. And sometimes I take, if it's a long thing I'm writing, I've written a couple of books this way, I'm taping pages together in a long scroll, and it's all longhand. My question to you is, so, and Richard knows and you can probably tell, I have a long background in ballet. And so, my background in movement is a lot of training in that. And so I laughed when you said, it's the first time someone's raised their arms is when they're looking at your fluid extensions there. So I guess I have a question. When you're talking about MindClay, and you're talking about the relaxation, the turning away from anxiety, the I should be doing this anxiety of I should be keeping up with the program. That's one type of anxiety that you've addressed, and you're talking about, we want to get men more interested in keeping with the program. But what I'm asking is, when you're looking at your app, and I looked at the mandalas, and I looked at the haiku, and I looked at those, it's 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 technology, but at the same time I'm thinking, so I remember working, as a dancer, being corrected by the ballet master's hands.
Right.
And the way I write is also, it's not about the it's really the material thing, that gets me more connected. And that's one question I have for you. And Richard's giving us time. We got to go to a quick break. Another question I have for you, maybe a comment. So I did see the work at the museum that you did, the sensory museum. I did see the extensions and the fluidity, and I did see the folks there. And um, so I studied, okay, this is an aside. And John, when you talk to him in Las Vegas, he may laugh at me because he comes from the other side. So the ballet training I had was George Balanchine. So my ballet companies were all Balanchine inspired companies, and Mr. Balanchine was a rigorous geometric perfectionist, and you had to look a certain way, you had to have a certain body, etc. He had a theory, even though he was a hands-on perfectionist, total geometric guy. He had a theory that there's, and John will probably laugh at me indirectly through you. So when you're doing any kind of a position in ballet, there's a thing that's called, the carriage of the arms. It's called port de bras. When you do that, the idea is not to have your arms be your arms, but to have your arms actually have a greater extension than they really are on your body. So it's an idea that you're actually beyond the physical material body, that you're using your joints to pull yourself, but you're also extending whatever energy field that is. And you can see it when it works. You can really see it when it works on the arms and the legs and even the spine and the head. You can see it. It's not just we're measuring the wingspan here. There's an extra 3 inches, sometimes 4 inches that appears.
Hmm.
And this is classical dance. It's not what John's probably going to talk to you about, but that was what impressed me about the exhibit, because that's exactly what the best ballet mistresses and masters are going for, is that extension through some mysterious thing that happens in dance. So that was something I wrote down I wanted to talk to you about. And then I also wanted, when we get back from the break, how valuable is it to you, because you worked with Teledoc and My Strength and all that, how valuable did you find in your background, how valuable did you find videos of smart psychologists telling you what to do when it wasn't exactly addressing you, like looking really at the face, at the eyes, at the body of another? How do you overcome that, I guess? And maybe that's why you said, forget it, I'm doing my MindClay. Maybe that was something Marco said, forget, this isn't hitting home. Richard, and I know I can see you're thinking there, Richard, because dear listener, we can see each other on our screen, because Richard, for FCC purposes, is recording, both the video and the audio. So, but Richard's mind is turning round and round and round. I can see him waiting to ask some questions. So Richard's going to ask some questions. So I want to know about when we get back from the break, I want you to think about the 2 questions, Marco, this idea about the body's extension in movement. The second question about the smart psychologist telling you something, and the distance that the technology has to the actual material person, and that's to 2 questions. And then I'd love for you to answer both questions in descriptions of what you said when we first started the interview, which was, when I looked at people looking at my art, I saw deeper things happening. Direct quote.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to answer those 2 questions, which happen to do with material, corporal, the corporality of a person. Anyway, Richard, you know what I'm driving at, don't you, Richard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's.
So when we get back from the break, we're going to open up that discussion between the 3 of us, and I'm reintroducing Dr. Marco Pinter, developer and genius behind the wonderful technology. I had the opportunity to take a look at it and download it, and it's just the coolest thing in the world. I'm trying to get used to it because, Marco, an old dancer like myself is so keyed into like the actual physical presence.
Mm-hmm.
that have that's a that was a little bit of a hurdle for me. I'd love to have you talk about that a little bit more. Hey, Richard, let's go to quick break, and when we get back from the break, we're going to talk about some really interesting stuff with Dr. Pinter. Take a look at YouTube if you can, dear listener, and anytime during the interview, and look at MindClay. Mind with a D, clay, clay, like you're making a vessel or a pot, which interestingly enough is the first medium that human creatures ever used uh, in the world of art. So MindClay, take a look at it. And Rich, let's go to quick break. We get back, we'll have some really interesting discussions about corporality versus, I don't know, the world of phantoms.
Huh.
Yeah. Don't turn that down. Back in a minute.
All right, you're clear. You have a TED Talk, if I'm not mistaken here, sir.
TEDx, yeah, with
TEDx. Uh-huh.
Mark Sylvester, who you may know. He runs the local TEDx.
I've been wanting to get in touch with him, but I don't have contact. I've thought about doing this. Now, there's two schools of thought. I've been seeing these little short videos on YouTube and Facebook about this one guy says, "Oh man, the one thing you need to do if you do nothing else is a TED Talk or a TEDx, what have you, because you could then garner 10, 20, 30, $40,000 of speaking engagement and get your word out and all this kind of stuff." And then I talked to other people who I know personally who are interested in me succeeding with my book and so forth and so on in my program. And it's, oh no, you don't need to do a TED talk. That's a waste of time. Now I don't know that they necessarily had a bad experience, but it's like, okay, I don't want to waste my time. But it just seems to me the TED talks I've seen are pretty darn good. I've really enjoyed them. I've learned a lot. What are your thoughts? And this is not on the air, by the way.
Yeah, okay. No, I appreciate that. There's a distinction that's important for that between the TED and the TEDx. And the TEDx are regional and happen, periodically. And then the TED Talks are a big, annual event that like stars and industry leaders go to. So the TED Talks are kind of a level up. But I would say TEDx, there's a lot less prep you need to do. Mark Sylvester sets it up in a really nice laid back way,
Okay.
kind of like this show. So
Yeah.
you're not going to get the audience of a big TED Talk.
Right. All right. We're Elizabeth. We are about to come back here.
Making coffee.
All right. I understand. All right. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. You're live.
Welcome back. I have the great honor of speaking with Dr. Marco Pinter. His invention, creation, work of art is MindClay. And if you're listening, you want to take a look and see the short YouTube explanation of MindClay kind of will be a good introduction for you. And my question was, maybe it's a function of my age. That sometimes technology distances me from the immediate experience. And then it could be a function of my training that, it's a very in-body experience to, to really dance for a career. And so I wanted him to address both of those topics based on a quote that I wrote down from Marco at the very beginning of the show. Richard, if you remember, when he was talking about the show that he was doing for the museum, he said when he was there, he looked at the crowds looking at the work, and he said deeper things were happening to people when they looked at his work. So riff on that a little bit, Dr.
Yeah,
Pinter.
thank you. I have I had 5 different movement-based interactive artworks that were at the museum and that I had showed elsewhere. And each one brought out a different kind of movement. And so the one we were just talking about, fluid connections, brought out this kind of fluid-like movement. I'll add for that one that a big part of that piece was that if 2 people are in front of it after several seconds, their nearest arms connect and they share an arm. And I had the experience like at least one person saying, "Did you feel that?" to the person next to them.
Oh,
Um,
it's like that phantom limb.
yeah, just when they were connected, like
Yeah.
something happened when they were connected. Um,
Yep.
and then there's one that you see yourself now, your silhouette now, and then 2 seconds ago and 4 seconds ago. So you're like controlling this group of you over time. It's called time dilation. That brought out larger movements in people. Occasionally saw cartwheels in front of that. So each one brought out a different kind of movement. And these are large scale. So that, I'm getting towards your question about an app. Um, so I wanted to bring healing to a lot of people, visual, music, writing, and movement. And how do you reach those people? And it's not a museum, unfortunately. It's through this device that everyone carries. And how do we, and similarly, how do we make that available to them all the time and not just when they happen to be visiting a place? So MindClay has, for instance, these art activities like we talked about, that you can be stressed out online at the DMV and you can pull it out and you can be making your mandala to kind of bring down your anxiety level while you're there. And that's not something you can do in a meditation app either. Meditation apps to start with, find a quiet place you can sit for 10 to 15 minutes. So it's necessary to put it on the device. Um, for a movement activity, if once you get into that, you'll see you're actually encouraged to put your device, and it can be a laptop too. It's actually a web app, I should mention. So you use it and install it from the browser on any device. So you're gonna have it on your laptop or your phone, but you set it down for the movement activities, and then you follow along, and you can be ideally standing up while you're doing that. So you are doing a movement in that way. And then every activity also ends with an integration page where you can write or draw about anything that came up for you during that. And you are encouraged to bring that practice into the week ahead of you. And we've heard that happen. And like one gal said, there's a few humming activities because humming
Yeah.
stimulates your vagal nerve and it's very healing. And
Yeah.
she's a young woman. She said, I've started doing that on my own. She said, I'm trying to get my boyfriend to do it, but I haven't convinced him yet. But that was a practice she brought into, real life, let's say. So we try to bring it, we call that digital to analog sometimes. We try to bring it off the device or at least have your device separate. But there are unexpectedly experiences that are better on the device. And there's this one, the Zen board, that you draw or write something that's giving you anxiety right now. And I've used this. And then you watch it fade away. And there's something about the act of physically touching the device and then watching it fade away that something cognitively clicks for you. So we're developing more of those and exploring more and actually looking for strategic investors to come who are interested in mental health or the arts to come in and kind of be part of this developing of more and more of these activities.
Hmm.
So, okay, so this idea that you're picturing something, letting your device help you picture something, and then you're watching it fade away. I got an image of myself being very upset with a family member and punching my pillow.
Good
You
job. I feel for the
Okay,
pillow
Richard.
though.
Well, I know. Well, 100
You know,
pounds not gonna make much difference.
there you
Anyway,
go. What
yeah.
I
So
find fascinating is you are involved in a process that some of us, especially as kids, did naturally, but because of what happens to us as we grow up, we forget how to do it naturally. And you are providing the tool to take us back to that process where we are using the most powerful tool known in the universe, and that's the human mind. Am I Am I on or off base there?
Okay, give me an example of what you're talking about that we knew as kids that we forgot.
I was lying in bed suffering from the flu. I don't know, maybe 7, 8, 9 years old. And I was lying there, and all of a sudden, my mother and sister come in the room, and I'm laying there moaning, just moaning and moaning and moaning. And my mother says to my sister, Mom, make him stop. He sounds horrible. My mother intuitively knew and said to my sister, No, that's how he heals himself. Now, I'm not speaking specifically of the moaning, but
Oh, that
somewhere
was in
inside,
vis-a-vis the hum. Okay, got
yeah.
it.
So somewhere inside, I knew that moaning would actually, A, maybe make me feel better, and or B, might actually put my system back in balance, fighting off whatever that was inside the flu virus or whatever it is. So, because they say it's thought that in the beginning was the word, and the word was God, and the word was with God. In the beginning, it was a thought that then became manifest into the material world. Well, you're kind of doing the same thing. You're saying, hey, I'm standing in the DMV. I'm not really happy to be here. So let's see if I remember. Okay, I'll go to Pinter's web thingy Madoogie, and I'll punch it in, and I'll calm down. And so we're using the mind and our thoughts to begin that process. The same as you brought up about law of attraction and that aspect. Am I correct in that respect, that you're trying to take us back to, and then in a good way, something that is just part of our nature as human beings and even spiritual beings?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's we had a tagline on the site, be creative, feel better. And then spoiler alert, everyone is creative. And I believe that
Yes,
kind of been a
I
part of
saw it.
my
Yep.
career for a long time. It reminds me something I actually saw yesterday. So, holiday weekend, I was at the beach and there was a family and there was a probably 4 or 5 year old boy and he had a little pebble and he's like waiting and then he throws it in the ocean. And then after that, he sort of has one arm swing at his side, kind of like a gorilla. And then he swings his leg around, and it was quite creative movement. He wasn't thinking about it, and he didn't care. And so, like, one of our next activities is going to be called Be Weird. And first, you draw weird, and then you write something weird, and then you sing weird, and finally, you move weird. And we need to be able to move weird. We were able to as kids. What was it? You spoke weird or sang weird when you were in that bed, right, Richard? To make you feel better. So yes, I agree with that completely.
Okay, so the idea then, Richard, it is that you talk about sound and vibration. It's so interesting that Richard brings that up because I did watch the humming exercise on MindClay, and I thought that was so interesting. And I'm a collector of singing bowls, 440 hertz. I try to find bowls that are, my mother has perfect pitch. I have relative pitch, sadly, but she helps me out. But the issue of that sound is such an interesting thing. And I want to just like tell you just a little secret about Richard, that he was blind till he was 13. Sound meant so much.
And
Did you?
actually, I will refine that definition. I was legally blind until 38. So,
Wow.
but yeah, and that's why I guess I'm in this business, as Elizabeth is explaining.
Right, right.
And I can now read the waves. I can find the breaths without listening, because we all learn how to read different codes. If you don't think you're bilingual and you're working on a computer, think again. You
Hmm,
may not be able to speak a different language,
right.
but you can read it, and those kinds of things. So, and Elizabeth, we are in the midst of, unfortunately, another quick break. Can you take us there?
Okay, okay. When we get back from the break, get back from the break, we're just going to have 3 or 4 minutes before we close. And I want to ask Dr. Pinter, obviously he's talked about the weird, the be weird, sing weird, act weird, dance weird. That's going to be a new chapter with MindClay. I'm looking forward to thinking what else is going to be new chapter of MindClay, and if there's going to be any group activities with MindClay coming up. So let's go to quick break. Maybe Dr. Pinter will tell us about those two questions. Don't turn that down. Back in a minute.
Very good. Very good. You're clear. You're clear. You're clear. Yeah, this is all fascinating. This actually brings up another thing, Doctor, is the concept, the definition, if you will, of healing. I'm a Reiki master. My wife and I both are. And in that process, we learned about how we send the energy. We're a conduit. We're not with no intent. We have no intent in we have nothing vested in that regard other than to send that energy and let the person do with what they choose to do. And my father's brother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. We sent the absentee healing. And at the funeral, my mother told us what happened following that absentee healing. And it got me to thinking, well, okay, I'm not supposed to put my intent, but we sent this absentee healing energy. So what the heck is the definition? And it wasn't until my wife's nephew passed away from leukemia that I realized the saying, oh, he succumbed to the leukemia. He lost his battle. And I thought, wait a minute. No, it's a win-win. If it goes into remission, I won. I'm still here. I get to do what I'm doing. But if my body ceases to function, I still win because now I'm free of that body. So I began to redefine the word healing to mean if the person is free either way, they're healed. So interesting stuff. Okay, Elizabeth, we're coming back. Oh, you got 2 minutes. 2 minutes is all you got here. So we need to wrap it.
Shame.
I know. Here we go.
We'll have to have him back.
Quickly answer.
Richard. Yeah.
Please, please, please. 3, 2, 1. You're live.
Oh, we only have a few minutes, and I asked Dr. Pinter for his next goal beyond the think weird, act weird, dance weird. So what's next, Dr. Pinter?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, you brought up group activities. It's interesting, Elizabeth, you have someone in your group working with a hospital cancer department. So we're starting to work with a hospital cancer department for outpatient wellness. And they have told us how much loneliness and isolation there is. And that's something we continue to develop. We have a community board where people post, if they want to, what they've created. I've seen some beautiful writings on there, really vulnerable. And then we have projects like the Mandala of Mandalas, where you create your own mandala, but then it goes into a group kind of quilt of many mandalas, and people can add like how they were feeling or something about themselves if they want. And you can see, oh, this one was in England and this one was in Australia, etc. So that's how we're addressing some of that.
Oh, this has been so interesting. And this is going to have to be the first part of 2-part or maybe 3-part discussion, definitely, because I want to find out more about MindClay and what it can do. And the next, so I want to bring on, the next time we talk, Dr. Pinter, I'm going to bring my son's father on, who has developed something similar, for Spain, India, and the US, a group of hospitals in outpatient cancer support. So I want to bring him on also, and maybe we can talk about that together. And then Richard's going to have to talk to you more too. I know. I can.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Marco Pinter. Thank you so much. We will be in touch.
All right, you're clear. Fantastic. And
yeah, definitely. How interesting. So Richard, so Dr. Marco, I'm going to send you a link to Richard, whatever Richard recorded. And then our deal with the station is the people who come on my show, they they can use whatever we do for themselves and however they want to use it, whether you do clips or or
exactly.
but however you want to use it, you can use it. Richard, I'll forward you that. And then what you can do for me is on my email, I need a good headshot as well, so that we can post this. But so the next time we talk, I'm going to be introduced. I did speak with my son's father last night at length, and showed him what I was talking about.